Welcome to Are You Done Yet? The podcast brought to you by Innovative E, the 2023 and 2024 Microsoft Partner of the Year winner and a 7-time Microsoft Award winner in the last 6 years. Hosted by Mike Taylor, CEO of Innovative E, and Brian Quick, Senior Director of Business Development, this podcast is your go-to resource for transforming your organization's project and work management strategies, enabling you to become a higher-performing organization with happier people. And now, Mike Taylor and Brian Quick.
Hi, and welcome to another episode of Are You Done Yet? The podcast about your project and work management challenges. I'm Mike Taylor, CEO of Innovative E, and as with me always, I have Brian Quick.
Hey folks, it's great to be here at another episode of Are You Done Yet? And we're going to continue our modernization series today by talking about minimizing disruption and maximizing adoption. It's great to be here, Mike. Great topic.
Yeah, it is a great topic. It's something that's you hear a lot about adoption and change management, but the minimizing disruption piece you don't always hear a lot about, especially from vendors that are selling software, right?
Yeah, we're going to talk to you about a little bit different approach today. We've seen a lot of folks go through this in their journey, and this is going to be about continuing what you're doing today while getting value over time. It's going to be a little bit different than what you would traditionally hear from a partner who implements project portfolio management, work management solutions.
Yeah, absolutely. And things have actually changed a lot, right? And we've talked about this a lot, and you've mentioned that there's been a pretty big shift in the way of thinking, 4 or 5 years ago and going back many years, putting in things like project online, a lot of the project management type solutions. It was all about adoption and change management. And while that's still really important, the disruption piece, I think, is really coming in because people have built a lot of solutions around, around these technologies. And a lot of times these solutions and what they've built required a lot more effort than just installing that initial piece of technology, right?
Right. They did. It was change management and your ability to, what your organization had an appetite for in terms of organizational change management and the way you went about that is an extremely important facet of implementing a PPM system. But what changed is, and you've heard us talk about this several times before, is the platform that Microsoft is providing has changed, and the opportunities that are within that platform have been game changing as far as Microsoft Teams and the Power Platform is concerned. So now we want to talk about taking you from where you are today. Maybe you're using Excel spreadsheets for project management, or maybe you're using a competing tool. Maybe you're using Project Online or Project Server, taking you where you are today, bringing that experience into Teams as a first order of business. And so you're amplifying collaboration first on day one. That is going to be critical to maximizing adoption because folks are going to realize that what you did there right away was provide them a better way to collaborate on the work they're already doing without having to send them through like expensive training or really change fundamentally, the way that they're interacting with your system, but just actually doing it through Teams all the time. And that's where our product Teams for PM comes into play. It's just basically taking that experience and bringing it into Teams entirely.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, I'd like to maybe the new term everybody's using is double click on something. And what you just said there for a second, when you talk about bringing, because there's some of these topics can sound a little bit abstract, but let's talk about one particular scenario. Let's talk about if you have Project Online and you're going to bring that collaboration experience into Teams. So just talk about that for a second in terms of, so you have Project Online and, back in the day when it first came out and it was Team Manager or whatever it was in 2003, then it became Project Server and then Project Online with the Project Web App experience. One of the really cool things is it was built into the SharePoint environment, right? So you could do like your sites, your SharePoint sites as for project teams and stuff, and the collaboration would happen there, which was pretty cool. It was a little bit game changing at the time. Right. It allowed project managers to set up sites and do things without having to go to IT and do a request for a file share or something. So all that, we've talked a little bit about that, but all that was really cool stuff. But if you think about now moving that experience away from kind of that legacy, and that's what a lot of people get confused with. And you think about a cloud experience, that is more of a legacy cloud experience, right?
Hmm.
The modern experience is built on Teams, built on the Power Platform, built on the Dataverse, built on the the AI capabilities, the Microsoft M365 Copilot. All those are the modern experience, and so you have the kind of
Right.
this legacy experience there.
Hmm.
And if you bring that collaboration experience over into Teams, what does that do for
Right.
you, Brian? I mean, what does that do for customers just day one? Just
Yeah.
even if
Well,
you're still
overnight.
using
Yeah.
Project Online for your scheduling engine and maybe
Right.
resource management and other stuff.
So you're visualizing your schedule in Teams, and instead of using those project sites, and you're adding different value add like risks, issues, lessons learned, decisions management lists in there. And then with Teams for PM, what you can do is automate the Teams channel creation and the permissions, and really start bringing that data together in terms of a common data set for all the
Hmm.
metadata. So what you're really doing is you're reducing the Project Online service, which had, like, to your point, it had collaboration capabilities. It still does, but those are kind of the old way of collaborating, right? We look at SharePoint websites and things like that as sort of it was good at the time, but now we've got Teams, so we want to move that forward into that construct. And so overnight, you're working in Teams. You didn't have to, like, invest in a new project management tool or anything like that. What you did was basically bring Project Online into the collaboration space in Teams. So now you can chat about the projects. You can have your risk issue capture right there in the channel. Everybody goes to the channel to find out what's going on, and then you can
Hmm.
line up some Power BI reporting in those channels too, which is another thing that Teams for PM accelerates and automates. So what you're doing there is allowing folks, like, you're freeing them up to collaborate the way they really want to,
Hmm.
but you're kind of removing this conflict that happens. So let me go through that, like what we see happening with customers. So they've got Project Online. It's sort of like on a website. It's in a URL. It's over here. And they've been encouraging and trying to get people to go over there and use those project team websites, go there to visualize the project plan. And they've been doing that for years, right? That's where you go to do the project stuff. Well, now people want to use Teams for that. And I think that that's a pretty safe bet. Like,
Hmm.
that's if you have it, you're basically going to end up using Teams to collaborate on projects, because projectized work is a lot of what goes on in an organization that requires collaboration. People are just going to naturally gravitate to that.
Hmm.
And what's going to happen is they're going to be collaborating in a channel that they set up for that project, for that team. And that collaboration is now going to be disconnected from the Project Online collaboration and the data that's
Right.
being captured in Project Online. So that's what's happening if you don't do this. There's an opportunity cost to waiting.
Right.
We have to kind of embrace the moment that we're in and say, look, I have an opportunity to amplify project team collaboration today, right now, without really going through the process of, am I on the right PPM system? Does it check all my boxes? Do I want to figure out, what long term, like, what you don't have to do any of that right now. All you really need to do is connect what you already have to Teams. And
Right.
that overnight is going to be a huge boon for your productivity.
Right. Yeah, I think you hit on two or three things there that are really key. Number one, people are probably, and we say this, and you've said this a lot, Teams is where work's happening anyway. If you're a
Where's
Microsoft shop,
happening? Yeah.
it's happening anyway. You're doing
Right.
things related to collaboration and work in
Mhm.
there anyway. So why
Yeah.
not formalize it for your project management and really start to build that structure around it, the information architecture and the team
Right.
channels, and everything, like you said, around your project management so that everybody can have access. Number two, more people can have access, right? Because
Mhm.
everyone who's licensed to have Teams, which is probably everybody in your enterprise, if you have a eSKU, E5 or whatever, you're going to be able to have access to that team channel, which you might not have by default with a project online implementation, right? You may have to buy
Yeah.
more of the essential license and things like that to give people access. So you have a broader, more democratized ability to involve any stakeholder
Mhm.
you need in your enterprise,
Sure.
and that could even be external vendors if you're licensing those folks or whatever. So you have a much better collaboration experience just out of the box. And I think the
Right.
third thing you hit on there was, I really want to highlight, is now without changing the underlying way you're managing the work in terms of,
Hmm.
the schedule management, resource management, whatever you're doing in Project Online, you've now started that modernization journey. And you hit on a couple of things there. Obviously, the collaboration piece, the reporting piece. So now it's much easier to do. You can surface things in Power BI. You could do it with Project Online too, but now it's easier to bring it into that, and you can start to manage other metadata and things related to it there, which now goes into Dataverse, getting a little more
Hmm.
technical. But then you also now have the access to the Power Platform to do any automations and things. So what we see customers doing is maybe they have some legacy automations over there, but they want to start doing some new automations. So now they start taking that data that's now living, that collaboration data, in the Teams environment, and they start using that for some automation, maybe connecting to other systems. Maybe they're also connecting to the Project Online information there. But you talk about the minimizing disruption. So now you've stepped into modernization,
Right.
and from an adoption perspective, people that are already using Teams will, this is a 5-minute training exercise, right? Here's the
Well,
channel you
sure. I
go
mean,
to
they're
and
just
go right
gonna
there.
they're gonna be like, wow, you brought it all in.
Yeah,
So I
yeah,
mean, I now I can do what I want.
yeah,
And it doesn't look any or feel any different than Teams if you do it right.
right.
So,
Yeah,
and
so
that's the trick, I think. I don't think you want to create like a whole nother user experience and have to train people on it. And you just want it to flow like Teams does, like, and just be similar to the way that they're interacting. You want the activities to go into, your action menu in Teams to get alerts. You want, things to flow through that way. You want the things that are happening on your projects to be in the regular alerts and notifications that you would get in Teams. You don't want
hmm,
it to be separate because that's where people are living all day now,
right.
especially if they're working remotely. So
Yeah.
it's a key thing to keep in mind. But you also get to bring in other tools with while minimizing disruption as well, which are the planner tool set. So
Hmm.
looking at like the option of doing projects with that instead, and I'm sure a lot of folks have heard about the premium features that they've released for Planner, which do allow you to use Planner as a scheduler for projects, and
Hmm.
it's really exciting. It's very that what they've built is very collaborative and very
Hmm.
exciting. It's a different experience than what you get in a project schedule that you're working on with Project Online or Project Server. And it's intended to be like team centric. So the best way, like the better together story, is with Planner and Teams because they're really making sure that those they work tightly together. So
Right.
there's an opportunity to introduce Planner as a scheduling option if you're using this method as well. And so what you're doing there is without having to do a migration or having to do a major project, you're basically allowing your team to use the latest features of what the Microsoft Modern Platform offers, within a matter of weeks. Because,
Yeah.
this is not like a huge major thing because we're not moving the data from one place to another, or you're not choosing to use another PPM system. You're basically just, we have a way of pulling this in with Teams for PM. So it allows you to start using those new tools. It allows you to start using Power Apps, Power Automate, and Power BI to your advantage. And then we want to talk about, and too, like those of you that are on Project Online or Project Server or even Excel, you think, boy, project management for, using AI and project management is probably not for me. My data is not well positioned. I'm on this older tool set. Well, no, I mean, it's not going to take that much to change that.
Right.
A little bit of investment in time and realization that, there are some pretty creative ideas out there about how to immediately give you benefit
Hmm.
from AI, even if your data is in one of the places I mentioned.
Right.
Um, you don't have to wait. You
Yeah.
can do it today.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, I'd like to go into, you said a couple things that are really interesting. And because we have a lot of customers who've done this exact scenario, right? So they've done
Hmm.
they had Project Online, or maybe they had
Hmm.
Project Server, and they
Hmm.
needed to upgrade. So we got them into the cloud, and then so now they're on Project Online, and they're still using that for their core PPM. Maybe they're doing IT or
Mm-hmm.
engineering or development or other things that require a more heavy lift. There's some feature functionality that's there in Project Online that they're already invested in. They've done customization, so they continue to do it in that with an eye towards the future. But what we see happening, and it's almost organic, is that more departments and things say, well, I've got a need for some project management, and I don't need maybe a detailed schedule or resource management capability and timesheeting, like, which isn't quite available yet in Planner, but I do need a scheduling engine, and I do need the ability to extend it and do these things. So we see a few scenarios starting to grow up there. Maybe it's just a basic project management type scenario where they're going to do that kind of thing, and they start to use Planner pretty much out of the box. Or we have customers who are saying, well, I'm not really thinking like a project manager, but what the work they do really is kind of projectized, right? So it's got dependencies and beginnings and ends and things like that, and limited amount of scope and resourcing and stuff. So they say, well, what can we do with this new Planner thing? Well, because it's part of the Power Platform, it's easily extendable and much faster to do customizations around your business process. So again, you've still got a group of people over here still using Project Online for the core, kind of more hard, high-end PPM type things, but they've brought their people into the collaboration space of teams, and they're taking advantage of all that stuff we just talked about. Now you have these other groups that are now coming in, and they're using this collaboration experience in teams, and now they're using the modern Planner product to do this, whether it's basic kind of project management or even customized, but it may not even look like a project management tool. It may look like an app that they have for this need that they have, this business process automation need. So it really does, you can see that this is all happening at the same time, and the platform enables you to do that. And there's, the adoption is really just around what it is you're now, kind of building for your users, which they're already doing. They probably have some manual process, or like you said, they're using spreadsheets, linked spreadsheets. We've seen very elaborate spreadsheets and databases and everything else that customers have come up with. And now they're doing it in this method. So really it's just a training around how to do that process they're already doing. So the disruption to their business and the adoption process, again, is fairly minimal. And it used to be, back in the day, we talked a lot about this. We did a lot of training. We did a lot of adoption management and stuff. With the modern platform, we find that we're doing much, much less of that. It's really more to train the trainer and getting their core group involved, and they're off and running.
Yeah, because they're already in there all day. So I mean, it just and the latest apps like Planner are made to be so intuitive to the everyday user that, like, really training really probably isn't necessary. I mean, if you don't know, if you want to use the premium features of Planner, and you're not familiar with basic project management concepts, I would suggest maybe you need a little training in that, and then the tool should be intuitive from that point. So we can help with that, but the fact that these people are already so familiar with Teams, and the more that we can bring things into Teams, the better. I mean, the way that you do that is through this Power Platform that you were talking about. So through the low code platform. I want to make another observation. We hear a lot. Here's what, we talk to folks about this, and we hear, like, what, I am different because I have all of these customizations that I've done to Project Online or Project Server, and I it's not for me because I know that's going to be expensive again, and so forth. But here's the thing. The low code platform that we're talking about, it should be much more cost effective to do any sort of customizations that you rely on. So a lot of people have built things around Project Online to customize the way it works for them, either specific resource management capabilities, or financial management calculations, things like that they had someone build for them. And that's okay, because you can continue to use those things now, and we can refactor them and evolve them into like a Power Platform solution, which should be a lot more cost effective than it was to have somebody build you that thing from scratch before. Yeah. So let's talk about it. Let's revisit that, because let's not use that as a reason that this isn't for you, because really, folks, I mean, this is the opportunity. This is the moment. I mean, you've got this opportunity to take Project Online from where it is today. You have several years until Microsoft's probably, they haven't announced any date for when it's going to be turned off, but the SharePoint applications are going by the wayside longer term in lieu of the Power Platform based apps. So it's better to get on that platform sooner rather than later, even if you think you're going to sit on Project Online for another, X number of years. Don't sit on it. Basically, there's an opportunity to refactor this stuff, get into the new platform, start getting the advantages of that platform today. The team's collaboration, the advantages of using Power Automate and Power Apps, and even AI today. And while you're transitioning, and we can make that as painless as possible because it's not a big migration. You can basically have Project Online running, bring it into Teams, spice in a little planner, and you've got a full solution.
Yep, absolutely. So one of the things you said that I think is a point, we've actually heard people say, I don't want to build a project management solution. I want to challenge everyone who hears this. You're going to build something. You are going to build something. Everyone does. We've been doing this for a long time, and every single customer has some amount of things that they've built, whether it's in a spreadsheet, it's in a .NET, it's in JSON. I don't care what the technology is, SharePoint, workflow, Power Platform. Every single customer that's doing anything that has just even a bit of complexity to it realizes that the endpoint solutions that do work and project management, PPM solutions, don't fit their tools. And it's like going to Home Depot and buying a bunch of lumber and hammers and nails and stuff. You're going to have to assemble it for the way you want that house built. And every single customer does that. So I challenge people, look at what you've done and how much time and effort and maybe external cost you have spent on trying to get things the way you need it to be for your particular business processes around work and project management. And I bet you, if you really did an analysis, you'd find it's quite a bit. It's a lot more than just buying a new tool and putting it in place. And so now you have a big investment in all of that. And what we're saying is you can evolve from that instead of doing a rip and replace. Because what people will say is, well, maybe I've got Project Online. I want to go to another platform because I know it's going to go away at some point. We don't know when. We do know that some feature functionality, we probably could do a whole thing on this, right? I know that some of the SharePoint functionality, like you just talked about, some of that is going away in 2026, in April of 2026.
Yeah, well, so they're gonna keep trimming it.
I mean, it's things that they just aren't going to continue to support that were there, right? Some APIs and some other workflow functionality and things like that. So it's going to make it harder to use. So you do need to go that direction. But this rip and replace concept, think about the investment you've made in all those customizations, whether they're actually formal customizations or they're in spreadsheets or they're in whatever you're doing. It could even be manual processes, but you have all this stuff that you've built, and you need to be able to move that into a environment that is easier to build and maintain and update in the future, because you're going to continue to do it. It is the nature of the work. There are no business applications that you put in and don't touch for 10 years. It doesn't happen. Hard stop. Not going to happen. You're going to have to continue, because your business changes all the time and your needs change all the time. And you're going to have to be better prepared to match that change. And that's what we're talking about here. And it's the minimally disruptive way with the best, most acceleration, the most velocity way to make these changes. And hitting on AI, that's another thing. If your data is moved, and we've talked about this in a lot of episodes and things too, if it's off in other silos and other places, the project work management collaboration data, how are you going to apply AI to it? You're going to use whatever that vendor gives you. You're not going to be able to apply the maximum power of the Microsoft platform, ostensibly the leader in AI for productivity and work management, right? With the everything they've done with the GPTs, the Copilots, now Copilot Designer and Copilot Studio's out. And so you can reason over all this information that's in the Dataverse and it's in the basic, all the applications that are there. You're not going to be able to do that if you're for these endpoints that are non-Microsoft. You will with some of the things like Planner, but some of the others you're not going to be able to do that with. So you're going to have to use highly customized APIs and things like that to get that data. So it's another big thing to think about, just with the M365 Copilot Studio, you're going to be able to reason over and have your AI, when you start dipping your toe in that, you're going to be able to do that a lot faster.
Yeah. And so for you folks out there that are sitting on Project Online today and kind of wondering what to do, I mean, this is a path. This is something to seriously consider. And it starts offering value and benefit almost immediately.
Mm-hmm.
Um, so think about, just reinvesting, evolving your solution, that the decisions that you've already made on the Microsoft platform to just continue to grow with the platform and go where it's going.
Yep.
It's an opportunity for quick wins and also a strategic plan for how you're going to evolve your PPM solution on the platform. For those of you that are on Project Server, and you're kind of wondering what to do, I mean, you could continue to stay on Project Server. There's still going to be a Project Server version, but here's the thing: why do we do projects? Why do we do projects? Why do we prioritize them? Why do we work on them? It's to get very strategic things done for an organization, to get work done in an organized manner, to track it, to make sure it's going well, right? Those are the most important things that your company could be doing at any moment in time. So why wouldn't you want to bring them into a more collaborative space that's a modern way of working and get them done more efficiently and effectively? It's not about just tracking the work. You can track the work and you can report on the work and you can do the time sheeting and everything. It's about getting it done. And the best way to get that work done in the most effective manner, is to let people work the way they want to these days in Microsoft Teams. And I'm 9 times out of 10, I'll bet you that if you've got a project in Project Server, there's probably a team in Teams already that they're trying to collaborate with, and the data is not being captured in any meaningful way.
Right.
So I would challenge you guys that are on Project Server to think about the opportunity that you're missing, to really embrace the platform that Microsoft is providing. And we can talk about evolving you in, just like the Project Online folks. We've done that for customers in the past, providing you those key quick wins and getting you basically in a place where your data is centralized, that you have a chance to use AI against it at some point, and that you're able to embrace the collaborative capabilities today.
Yeah, and one of the things that a lot of customers are finding, because we're now several years into the Power Platform and now a couple years into the AI, is that they're building their own centers of excellence. They're building their own capabilities, and that just like you did before with SharePoint and all the other newer technologies. And as those grow and build internal, then you've got the better ability to continue to do that work yourself, or hire partners who can do that work, because the resource availability is becoming very ubiquitous. There's a lot of Power Platform talent out there now where there wasn't 5 years ago. And there's a lot more Power Platform talent, I would argue, just in the human resource market out there than there is for a lot of these point solutions that are out there. The work, dayoftheweek.com and all that other stuff. You want to go do customizations there, you got to find a specialist in that. And they're going to be very few and far between, and probably much more expensive than somebody who has, capabilities on the Microsoft platform. So that's another thing to consider, is that, if you're a Microsoft shop, then these tools, this tool set you have, you're going to continue to build on it and have the capabilities, and the people to do this work are going to become much easier to come by. I know it may not seem like it now if you're just getting started. We have an awful lot of customers who are early in their Power Platform and AI journeys, but it'll come fast. I think it's going to come fast.
Right. No, that's very true. It's that's how we're going to do workflow. That's how we're going to do reporting. That's how we're going to create a construct to collect metadata. So Power Platform is extremely critical to this, and the entire momentum of Microsoft moving to a Power Platform trajectory in the last couple of years has been amazing. And it is going to be a huge space out there for skills. People are already standing up Power Platform practices in their companies and organizations. And there's there's going to be a plethora of people out there on the market that are going to have these skills that you can pull in internally, and create an area of practice yourself. But in the meantime, there are partners like us that can fill in the blanks.
Yeah. And actually, I'm gonna put you on the spot here, Brian. We didn't talk about this too much, but I'm gonna take you back to the adoption story, right? How many of our customers, as a percentage, would you say have told us that they have installed something like a project server or a project online or even a third-party solution, and over time it started to atrophy because they didn't have the capability to continue to keep it up to the latest changes, so users started to lose either interest or it wasn't keeping up with the latest changes they needed to do? It's pretty high percentage, wouldn't you say?
Only if they don't use us.
Right. Yeah, I'm saying folks we've talked to that haven't been using us, right? They've been out on their own, or they've had.
This is a constant conversation that we have, with folks. Because, look, I think it's easier than ever to basically invest in your project and work management solution and retain an investment in it over time.
That's where I was going.
With Power Platform, we're making changes all the time, and it's not that time consuming, or it's not a big deal, right? But until people build up their areas of practice, then they can do it themselves. But it's been a struggle. I mean, it's a constant conversation that you and I have had with countless customers that come to us, and they just want an easy button, or a solution that they can buy one time and then they can set it and forget it. Well, we're here to tell you that just doesn't work. So you need to invest in this over time. You come to the realization that your projects are important. They're really strategic to your organization. So having the right tools to do that is extremely important. Right. And being able to evolve those tools to be responsive to the changes in your processes and the way that you work and other ideas that you have in order to make it better, putting something in place to be able to manage that is critical to your success, because that's what these systems are built to do. They're built to be flexible and evolve over time without putting huge amount of effort into it. But you can't put none. Right. You can't say, I'm going to set this up and forget it, because I do talk to several customers a week who put up project online. Maybe they used a partner or they did it themselves several years ago and haven't touched it. Mm-hmm. Well, it doesn't matter how good a system is or what its potential is to make an impact on your business. You can't leave it alone over a period of time and then expect it to keep giving value back. It just doesn't work that way.
Yeah. Yeah. We haven't done a customer corner in a while, but I would maybe, if you'll indulge me for a second, let's talk about, we have a customer that full life cycle. I think we've talked a little bit about this customer and others in the past, but this is a big consumer products company. They came to us 3 or 4 years ago. They had a server implementation. They were struggling with adoption, but they couldn't get rid of it because it was doing some key functions for them. They had to do it. We worked with them. We got them onto online. But one of the key things was also a modernization story. It was one of the first that they actually were talking to us about modernization. And so we did. We brought them in. They moved into Power to Project Online, brought them into the collaborative environment of teams. We put our product in teams for them. And then what they found, which was really fascinating, is how fast some of those customizations that needed to be redone, how fast those were done. And maybe even more interestingly, they found that when they needed to update those because the business logic changed, the rules changed, how fast that happened. It was no longer a 6-month development process. It happened in maybe in some cases a week or two. So from concept to it's installed. Right. You've got this new thing going on. So these aren't abstract concepts we're talking about. Customers are really doing this stuff today.
They're really doing it. And to their credit, they understand the basic concept of making sure that care and feeding is there. We have an annual contract with these folks. We talk to them,
daily.
Daily. There's several folks on our team that talk to them, various people daily. There's a twice a month meeting set up where we get together and just make sure we understand how it's going and what their priorities are. And we're working through the list there keeps getting things added to the list
all the time.
Get prioritized. I mean, if you're not doing that, then it's just going to die in the vine. There's going to be a huge list of undone things and stuff people wanted you to do, but then you never got around to. And eventually people are just going to stop using it. And,
Right.
some of you in regulated industries and organizations, like, where they have to use it, are going to be like, well, no, they're not. They can't stop using it. It's their job. They have to fill out their timesheet because we're telling them they have to fill it out, or they have to have the plan in there because that's where the official plan of record is. That doesn't mean that's actually helping them get the work done, guys.
Right.
They're just going through the motions that they have to in order to get either the reporting or the regulatory requirements boxes checked, and that's it.
Yep.
So you're not really helping them in that situation actually get the project completed on time, under budget, with the scope that you had intended. You're not providing those people with the right tools to do the softer, more human side of project management, which is, are you managing the risks? Are you managing the issues? Are you leading the team? Are you finding, ways to get the project done? And are you looking at data in a critical way? Do you have the right reports you need in order to be able to tell, what's going on before something goes wrong?
Mm-hmm.
Like, for example, that AI feature that we built in for sentiment analysis.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, that's pretty cool. That's pretty innovative, right? I mean, and we're using basically Azure AI. We built this tool. It's in Teams for PM already, but it's like intended for customers to take a look at it and be like, oh, wow, what if we built this? Or what if we did that?
Mm-hmm.
But basically what it does is it reads the posts in a Teams channel, which is aligned to a project. And it says, is the project going well according to what way people feel about it and the way they talk about it? Those are the kind of possibilities that we're leaving on the table here when we aren't evolving and we're not modernizing.
Yeah, operational improvements. So we're tackling those. That's one. We're doing things with meeting minutes. We're doing some things with resource planning. But like you said, a lot of this is to tackle some of these individual problems that are kind of widespread, but also to show customers the art of the possible, because then the platform allows them limitless capabilities. And we're already seeing customers do that. They're using Power Platform, and some are starting to use AI to do some things that may not be in the core product set or even in the product that we're providing, but it's something they need to do, and they can do it, and it's all it's integrated on the back end, so it all works, and it's sort of ubiquitous. And back to that adoption thing, to this big consumer products company, they were struggling with adoption on the project server. Now they've moved to project online. Now they've moved into the modern piece. Not only are they getting better adoption with the core PPM type things, but they're also starting to expand it in other departments, like we talked about before. They're starting to see opportunities maybe for lower maturity type things, but now they're using things like Planner and other things to manage these other projects that were not getting managed. They were probably on a spreadsheet or a piece of paper or something before. So they're continuing to mature and getting more and more people involved. And like you said, you named a bunch of the things that are outcomes of using a good project management or work management solution. At the end of the day, the big thing about, you hear us talk a lot about adoption, is when tools are adopted and used, then value is created. And we don't need to talk about that. There's plenty of IDC and Gartner and everybody else analysts that will show you the economic impact of adopted software. It's huge. And if you don't adopt software, then the economic impact could be minimal or even negative, right? If you're just using it for some compliance thing like time reporting or something.
Right.
That's just, you're just checking a box. But we're really talking about advancing it and adding value to the organization, and being more strategic with what you're doing with your people and your work and their time.
Already made for collaborative project and work management. That makes a lot of sense. Let's talk about that. Let's work through that. And so you might find that the conversation is a little easier than you might think.
Yep, absolutely.
All right. Well, you know what would be great is if folks that were interested in this came to our website, innovative-e.com, to learn a little bit more about it, and then contacted us if you want to talk about it. We're always here to help, even if you just have a question. So thanks for listening to the Are You Done Yet podcast again. Don't forget to like or subscribe, and check out Mike's new book, on Amazon. Just a reminder, the project and work management revolution is here. It's here.
It is. It is.
Yep.
And this
So
actually
check it
talks
out.
for
It's
folks
on
who,
audiobook right now, right?
yeah, it's available in
Yeah.
all formats. Audiobook.
That's important for us busy people that are
Yeah,
driving kids around to things and walking dogs and doing all that stuff.
About an hour and a half listen. But it talks a lot about the stuff you're talking about in terms of it delves into releasing the human capabilities, how AI and humans can be more symbiotic and create kind of a co-intelligence to be able to really, that humans can do a lot more and that AI can do the mundane work that humans don't want to or don't necessarily do very well. So
yeah, I think we'd all love to be project managers and not work coordinators, right?
Data chasers.
Data chasers, yeah. Whatever else you want to call us, project manager types. But why did you write it, Mike? I mean, what really made you motivated you to write that book?
I really think it was there really is this inflection point that we're seeing, and I kind of wanted to clarify our view and what we've seen. And there's a lot of hype around project management and AI. There's AIs on everything, not just project management, but in our space, the way we see it. I wanted to kind of give a more clear view of a pragmatic way to look at how AI can and will approach things. A lot of people, we've talked about this. It's human nature, right? Speaking of books, right? You want to go to the back cover and see how the story ended. You want to jump to the front of the line. You want to get this AI in right now and do all this amazing stuff you can do with AI, which is it's admirable. And some people, of course, the opposite end of that is most IT organizations have shut it all off right now. So they're starting a gradual dipping toe into it and starting to do it. So it's you've got the yin and yang there, but it will be there, and co-pilots and things like that are on in a lot of organizations. But I wrote it primarily to shed the light on a pragmatic way to look at using AI to do a lot of those operational components. And as you build that, you talk about terms like co-intelligence, it sounds very lofty, but what it really means is that humans and AI are working. AI is doing the thing it does best, which is interpreting us and maybe helping quantify and qualify data better. Things like issues, risk, action items, being able to put that in, sentiment analysis, all kinds of things that humans are not necessarily great at doing because we get busy, we forget to do something, we don't capture it. So really getting that in there, and as that data is in there, then the humans can use it to make better decisions. And then you can start getting to some of the things that people are saying are the aspirational goals of AI, which is like predictive analytics and being able to say, reason over a bunch of projects and data and say, this kind of project could be in trouble earlier, or here's the way you might want to approach that. But you have to have those data sets first, and it needs to be in a secure, governed, responsible AI way, and it has to be in a way that works well with the humans involved, and of course with all the I say security, can't say secure enough. It needs to be in your tenant and governed the way you want it governed. So that's kind of why I wrote it. It's really to beat people into this way of thinking of it seems to be a pragmatic way to apply AI to the project management revolution, the AI revolution.
Yeah, we're trying to get the word out. We are at an inflection point. I mean, what we have here is like new platform capabilities that can do things that we could never do before. And
it's very exciting times.
It is. It's really exciting. And so, folks, let's keep talking about it. So like or subscribe. Are You Done Yet podcast. All right, Mike. So I think we're wrapping this one up, right? We're putting it in the bag.
I think so.
All right, folks. Well, it's great to see you, and we'll talk to you next time. For Mike Taylor, I'm Brian Quick. Are you done yet?
Are you done yet? Never done, Brian. Never done.
Never.
Thanks, everybody. Thanks, Brian.
Thanks for tuning in to today's episode of Are You Done Yet? Remember to like and subscribe and check out the show notes for links mentioned in today's episode. Leave us a comment or share your thoughts on today's topic. We value your insights and look forward to sparking a conversation about the future of project management. Join us next time as Mike and Brian discuss leveraging your existing tools to maximize your investment.